I did ask for permission to say how are you? Good to see you. 3 weeks away from a lot. Way to go. 3 weeks from Wednesday. To that I would say molto bene. Well, I would like to speak my piece because meeting is very different from what I think it would be. We'll see how it goes. You heard. My piece, unless the meeting materializes.
These are updated.
Did we gather recording?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's recorded. Oh. Okay, no problem. Yeah, she's doing her email.
A friend of mine, watering my flowers. She volunteered kindly to water my outside. Oh, it's ancient history. Yeah, we'll buy it under the concept. Going along the alphabet. We got a little tight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Monday, August 28th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. First item on the agenda tonight is the approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have any requests for changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up are the meeting minutes from Monday, July 10th. It's been a while, 2023. Any concerns about the minutes or edits? Oh, seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve Planning Commission meeting minutes dated July 10th, 2023.
Motion from Commissioner Farr. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Commissioner Kirk. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, moving on, we have, it looks like 3 public hearings this evening. The first one is Pulte Homes 2023-08. This is a request for a PUD concept plan review on 6.13 acres, PUD district review with waivers on 6.13 acres, zoning change from rural to RM-6.5 on 6.13 acres, preliminary plat splitting 2 parcels into 43 lots on 6.13 acres, site plan review on 6.13 acres. Will the proponent of the project please come forward? Good evening. If you could state your name for the record and please tell us about your request.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission.
and city staff. My name is Dean Lauder. I'm the manager of land planning and entitlement for Pulte Homes. And I do want to talk to you about our application for a neighborhood we're calling Kinsley. If I could have that brought up. And presentation, there you go. Thank you. So we've got a short agenda here, a brief presentation for you. Want to tell you a little bit about Pulte Homes if you're not familiar with us. We'll talk about our proposed neighborhood design, talk about the proposed townhomes, and then provide a summary and then stand for any questions that you may have. We're an established builder. We're in, I think, over 40 markets in 29 states. Here in the Twin Cities, we're active in about 22 neighborhoods, and we are experienced at infill developments. We operate under some different names. We own Centex. You may be familiar with that name. Pulte Homes is who we're operating under tonight. And we also own the Del Webb name. And that's a very popular development product that you see in a lot of southern states. It's kind of newer to the Minnesota market. We have 2 Del Webb neighborhoods. Those are age-restricted, 55 and up homes for your active empty nesters and retirees. And the site that we're talking about is kind of in the southeast corner of Pioneer and Dell. We're proposing to build 2-story townhomes in this infill neighborhood. There are single-family homes directly to the east. There are townhomes directly to the south. Across Dell to the west, there's another townhouse neighborhood. We would get access to the site off of Dell Road primarily. We do show the Valley Road connection here per city staff's recommendations. And our proposal is on the lower end of the comp plan guided density for this site. The site is guided 5 to 14 units per acre, and our proposal is 6.85 units per acre. And we also try to do the best we can with preserving as much vegetation, existing vegetation as possible. Overall, we're proposing 42 townhomes. They're in the price range of the low 400s into the low 500s. At the neighborhood meeting, I actually had a different price range that was started out a little lower than that. I've since got updated information, and so I just wanted to point that out for anyone who might be here from the neighborhood meeting that sees that as a different piece of information. There would be a homeowners association in this neighborhood, or an HOA. So the roads inside the development, Larimar Trail, would be maintained by the HOA, all the snow removal, all the lawn care, the exterior maintenance of the buildings. We're proposing to have a trail connecting Valley Road to Dell. We'd also have a trail connecting the neighborhood to the existing trail along Pioneer. And we also have worked with city staff to make sure that we meet the usable open space requirement. Oop. Are you doing that? There's a little delay here. There we go. So this is the usable open space. The city code requires 150 square feet per unit, which gives us 6,300 square feet to comply. We surpassed that with 6,338 square feet. Primarily, we have a fire pit area with a seating area. There's a trail led up to it, and there is some open green space too in that area, along with the trail depicted in the northeast corner of the development. A couple of facts or bullet points about just the environment of the site. We were asked to update a wetland delineation. The city's code requires that be done every 3 years. We found that the hydric soils present on the site were a very small amount, under 1,000 square feet, which is what's considered the de minimis threshold, and they were low quality. So we filed our application for that declaration with city staff. Tree preservation, we do have 542 caliper inches of trees that need to be mitigated. 285 inches are required by the city's landscaping requirements, and so our landscaping plan will actually account for 426 caliper inches of proposed landscaping, and then the balance will be made with a cash in lieu payment per city code. We did also, at staff's request, contact the DNR and obtain an NHIS letter, which takes a look at whether there would be likely hospitable environmental conditions for endangered or threatened species, and it was determined by the DNR that the site wouldn't, and that no further study was necessary with regards to that. Sorry, the buttons are very sensitive. City staff also asked for a rendering from us that would depict, as you would turn in from Valley Road, what would the development look like pictorially, and so this is what we provided them. We also wanted to take a look at what different perspectives might look like. So this one would look, if you're standing at one of the townhomes directly to the south of Valley Road, south of Kinsley, and you're looking northerly, what would you likely see? What would your view shed be? And you can see there's existing trees in that area. We're also proposing to build a 150-foot fence that would help screen headlights that might come out of the townhome neighborhood that could go towards those existing homes to the south. So we heard this concern at the neighborhood meeting, and we adjusted our plans to address that concern. This is in kind of the northeast corner of the proposed development. This is a perspective from an existing single-family home to the townhomes. Again, there's actually an existing fence there. There's actually a lot of trees that'll be preserved. We'll also be planting additional trees as well. And just to take another look too, just to show the buffers between the proposed townhomes and the existing single family up in that corner. You're 140 feet from the proposed townhome to the existing single family. And then there's one existing single family, 3 homes to the south, that actually sits quite a ways back on its lot. And it's still 90 feet away from a proposed townhome. And then again, similar to that view shed drawing that was a couple slides ago, if you're standing at the townhome to the south, right on that lot, you're about 110 feet away from a proposed townhome in the Kinsley neighborhood. And then, of course, the green line there is depicting the approximate placement of that screening fence. Just to talk a little bit about our townhomes, here's a depiction of one of our buildings that has 4 units in it. We'll be building 4-unit buildings, 5-unit buildings, and 6-unit buildings in Kinsley if approved. And just to kind of give you a spatial perspective of what they look like inside, They can be 1,850 to 2,400 square feet. If you add on a sunroom in the back, there's also a second floor seating room that you can have off of the owner's suite, and so you can get up to 2,400 square feet. Each unit will have a 2-car garage and have 2 parking spaces in their driveway, as well as some guest parking. Our townhomes tend to live these particular townhomes, I should say, tend to live very similar to kind of a single-family open concept experience. They're open, they're bright, and they're sought after by an array of different buyers. Here's just some other shots on what the second level would be, what the bathrooms and the laundry rooms might look like. And we try to change up the color palettes. We do try to have offsetting footprints, and we have also worked with city staff to add some architectural features, especially to the ends of the units that will face either public roads or other existing neighbors. So we've added quite a few windows to the sides of those end units. We've wrapped the stone from the front all the way along the side. And so we have tried to meet the requests or the guidance of city staff in enhancing the architectural nature of the buildings. I referenced kind of an array of buyers who would be interested in a townhome like this. Well, naturally, I think a lot of folks think, first-time home buyers and townhomes. But frankly, what we experience in this market is about 30% of our townhome buyers are actually retirees or active empty nesters. And so it's not necessarily a first-time home buyer's product. It's actually somebody who doesn't mind stairs yet and lives a more active life, but they want to have kind of that carefree living that goes with not worrying about the exterior maintenance of your home, not worrying about the lawn care or the landscaping or the irrigation or the snow removal. And we also, in a lot of instances, our homeowners associations take care of the garbage, the recycling, and contract all of that too. So this, we find, actually appeals to a wide range of buyers. So just kind of a summary, Kinsley, as a neighborhood, meets the city's comp plan guidance for the site. We provide a housing type that we believe is needed in the market. We try to make the neighborhood design a thoughtful design. We listen to the concerns from the neighborhood meeting, and we haven't been able to address all of those concerns, but we try to where we could by keeping buffers from existing neighborhoods, screening headlights where we could, and adding architectural features to the exteriors that they would be looking at or seeing. So here we are tonight, August 28th at Planning Commission. Should this body recommend we move forward, our schedule then would be to be in front of the City Council meeting for the first reading on the 19th of September and then October 17th. And we would hope to start development next spring if this project were approved. Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Initial questions for Mr. Lutter from the commission.
I do have one.
Commissioner Kirk?
Do you have a similar development in the Twin Cities area, similar to this?
We have several. Pemberley is one that's located up in Brooklyn Center, I believe. And it has very similar architectural features. We're building these types of homes in Astor Mill Development in Rogers. We're building these townhomes at Rush Hollow in Maple Grove. We're at Canterbury in Shakopee. So we do build these townhomes in a lot of different places.
Similar density?
Yes.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Barnhart, will you take us through the planner's report, please, on this?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, Chair, Commissioners. Just briefly, planning staff has been working with this developer for several months on trying to fine tune the project and try to address as many of the issues as we could. As Mr. Lauder noted, this 52 units. It is consistent with the comp plan relative to density and the land use, and also as shown related to the transportation plan, which talks about the connection of Valley Road, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. Through that review, though, there are a number of waivers requested as part of the PUD. The density just exceeds the maximum allowed by the zoning district. Keep in mind that the comprehensive plan density is a range from 5 to 14 units an acre. This is kind of on the lower middle range of that density, but it does exceed the density allowed for the R1 or RM 6.5 zoning district by 0.0 or by 0.1. The minimum lot size requirement minimum is 3,000 square feet. The smallest lot here is 1,900 square feet or so. From our standpoint, from a planning perspective, lot 43 satisfies kind of the goal of the minimum lot size and also later the minimum lot depth, because it functions as open space for each of those lots in terms of visual while it's owned in common. So there's a minor distinction that you'll see in many of our townhome developments where the minimum lot size is kind of shared with the common spaces. Similar to that, the lot depth, the minimum the minimum depth is 100 feet. The shortest here is 81.12 feet. The average is about 81.5 feet. So it is shorter, but behind each of these parcels or each of these lots, there is at least 20 feet before you get to another building or before you get to a trail or the property line. So in essence, that kind of functions as an open space and the depth perception issue. So again, from a character standpoint, we think the PUD standards are appropriate here. PUD waivers are appropriate here. Lots without frontage on public street is the fourth waiver requested. We find that that's typical in a lot of our townhome developments where each of the units are fronted with a private road, not a public street. And again, maintenance of those streets is provided by the HOA. There's a public utility easement under that for the infrastructure, the water and the sewer. But it does require a waiver for most of these lots as they don't have frontage on a public street. And then the last one is setback along Valley Road. Lot 1 in the southwest corner of the project. Not the lot separation, but the lot kind of building etched in is about 20 feet from the property line with Valley Road. So that would require a waiver because the minimum setback in that situation would be 30 feet. Those are the 5 waivers that we've identified. Staff is supporting the proposal as shown. There's a number of kind of technical comments and conditions that we typically put on these projects in terms of future permits and things. And so we are recommending approval of those 4 actions mentioned at the head of this application, subject to those conditions. We anticipate a number of questions about the traffic and the Valley Road extension, and we have some additional information from the city engineer's office on that, if I could turn it over to him.
All right, thank you. So from a staff and perspective, and in particular an engineering perspective, this project is supported. It was recommended as part of this development review that the Valley Road connection be made from the existing neighborhood on the east side to the Dell Road on the west. The following 3 reasons support that decision from an engineering standpoint and recommendation. The first being, it's a planned connection as part of our comprehensive plan and evident in completed developments in the area. Number two, making this connection meets the goals of that plan by providing safe, convenient, effective, and efficient system that balances mobility, access, and diverse needs of the system users. And third is safety. This development and related road connection provides access for residents to a lower volume, slower speed, signalized, controlled intersection. So going into a little bit more depth on those three, through the comprehensive plan efforts and recommending implementation of that plan through development, this road connection has been planned for several years. The current and previous city comprehensive plans have listed Valley Road as an anticipated connection. This is evident not only in the plan, but in developments that have occurred in this area. For instance, Valley Road has been connected or shown as connected to Dell Road in the last development in this area when Preston Place was built. So you can go to the next slide there. So this is the heritage plans from 2001 showing that Valley Road connection in that space. More recent developments have also made planned connections per the comprehensive plan. Notably, if you go to the next slide, the other two blips there on that map, that's kind of a small scale, but those are Stirrup Lane and Cedar Crest Drive that were recently connected through as part of those developments. These long-term plans are vetted out, studied, and approved at an elected official level. When the opportunity for them to be implemented comes, they should be acted on, in my opinion. This slide here, as I would say, part of the reason this connection is important is due to past developments that didn't follow kind of our plan for that Valley Road connection through there. We lost or greatly hindered the opportunity for future connections. As you can see in this map, and I believe this is probably part of the point of the connection all the way across here. You see the Valley Road, gravel road section in this map. You see the couple of cul-de-sacs. When that Shetland Road was built as part of the Riley Creek Ridge plans, the opportunity to connect that through there was more or less lost. There's still a ghost plan that is a connection to that Valley Road that leads down through the Mac property, but that's kind of in that Valley Road plan or Ridge plans, Riley Creek Ridge plan set. So the connection could still be made there, but just not in the location that's would be evidently made across there. The concept of timing for these types of development improvements is always challenging when the city is more or less at the mercy of developers and private property owners. To say that the city should have made the connection years ago isn't really a fair request, in my opinion, or an argument, since this isn't how the city is being developed, or really any city, or has been developed previously. I can say with fairly confidence that I don't believe the city council would approve purchase of private property to build city streets. In my opinion, that's not it's cost prohibitive for tax owners or taxpayers. The city does always encourage developers to group parcels together, such as this, right? We got the two parcels lumped together in this development. If the development would have been lumped together 20 years ago with Preston Place, it would have been made there, in my opinion. It would have come together there. But regardless of how long this final connection has taken or where the residents lie on, this resistance of change curve, it makes the current situation better from a transportation and access standpoint. The second point I made is really about mobility and access. The connection is obvious that it's a benefit that provides alternative access both in and out of the existing neighborhood. It is very likely that travel patterns will change, after this connection is made for both most likely the existing residents that are using this area. The typical development best practice promotes more than one access point. Preston Place is essentially an 1,800-foot cul-de-sac. Shortening that distance along with providing options to head you in a different direction that you're headed when you leave your house makes sense. The Kinsley development traffic is shown in this graphic here, shows the trip generation for the 42 units in this town or in the townhome development. 283 daily trips expected, 17 a.m. peak trips, 21 p.m. It's estimated that 90% of those, I lost my text on the bottom of that slide, 90% of those 283 trips, or both in the AM and PM, will go towards Dell Road. I think that's expected. That's what the developer and the developer's engineer has anticipated, and that makes sense to me as well. What we do anticipate is the existing neighborhood utilizing the new connection, just as I've stated before. Now you can go to the next one, Jeremy. So we did some modeling. We based on some traffic counts that we've done in Cedar Forest and Braxton. This shows existing intersection, some conditions as far as delay and level of service. In particular, we looked at that Cedar Forest and Pioneer Trail intersection, as well as the intersection that would be the connection to Dell Road. So you can see there's some timing for Cedar Forest delay. It's 11 seconds. It puts it in a level of service B. That's just based on that second delay area. And it also just shows the Dell Pioneer Signal intersection level of service, which is C and B. So if you go to the next slide, which shows proposed intersection delay, this is with the connection made. So you'll notice the Cedar Forest stayed at level of service B, but actually the delay lowered just a bit. And that's because of the anticipated traffic that may go to that other through the connection to that other intersection. Weedman and Valley Road connection would remain the same, and the Dell Road and Pioneer intersections remain the same. The final point that I wanted to make was just safety, from a safety standpoint. So EMS and fire access, in my opinion, would be improved. I think that's just a standard fact. 24/7, 365 days a year, incidents happen and routes to properties vary depending on the circumstances. Another access point is a benefit, regardless of whether it's worked in the past. Pioneer Trail is a functional classified as a minor arterial. Speed limits are 45 miles an hour. The volume is around 7,000 vehicles a day. There's kind of a turn lane up at Cedar Forest, but it's really a bypass lane that is eventually a right turn lane to turn up on Belvedere. Dell Road is a major collector. That's where this connection would be made to. At Valley Road, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour. And last week we did a speed check on Dell Road, and they were averaging 30 and 28 miles per hour southbound and northbound. And the volumes along Dell are around 3,000 vehicles a day. And there are turn lanes that are already built and provided for this access point. And the last point there is the sight distance is better on Dell Road than on Pioneer Trail. If you're going up to Pioneer Trail from Cedar Forest and you want to take a left or a right, the difference in sight distance that you need to just safely make that turn is 500 feet. If you're on Dell Road, you're coming out from Valley onto Dell Road, that distance is around 287 feet. And that's mainly due to the speed limit difference between those two roads. So in summary, I know it was a little bit lengthy conversation, but in summary, the staff support this development connection of Valley Road. That's in line with the comp plan. Access is improved as well as overall safety.
We stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Any initial questions for the city?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. If I could go back to Mr. Schultz, thanks for that good presentation. And regarding some of these roadway questions, when you talked about Pioneer Trail, that's a county road, obviously. Are there improvements scheduled for that sometime in the distant future? I noticed that, like Dell Road is fully improved, curb and gutter, et cetera, and Pioneer Trail isn't, of course.
The latest, sorry, Chair and Commissioners, the latest note from the county is that in 2025, they plan to do a mill and overlay project on County Road 1 in that section that's unimproved, I would say. And due to that mill and overlay happening in 2025, that pushes out any major improvements like you would see to the easterly section of County Road 1. That pushes them out probably 10 to 15 more years. So we're looking at 2040 before there's substantial improvements made on Pioneer Trail.
Thank you. In the development, there's a 24-foot wide private driveway scheduled, and I believe that's consistent with other private driveway widths, specifically in this area of town, if not others within our city remote from this. So I drove that a couple times today, and it seems adequate. If someone is parking on one side, you can bypass it just in case FedEx or Uber or a moving van pulls up and wants to park along the curb there. But one thing I noticed in this development due south, I forget the name of it, they have signs up allowing parking on one side, whereas this development states that there will be no parking on either side, and it'll be signed as a fire lane. Can you tell me why there's a difference between why they allow parking on one side for a 24-foot drive aisle on that southerly development, and this one is a fire lane on both sides with no parking?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I think it's the preference of the developer, to be honest with you. There wasn't really a lot of discussion on that from an engineering standpoint, whether that parking should be allowed on one side or not. I think it also might be limited to number of driveways that are accessed off of that roadway with leftover space there. I believe they exceeded their parking requirement for additional parking within this space, so their parking on street wasn't necessary.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then you did mention something about dead ends, and you were talking about one of the streets adjacent to this development, but do you think there should be a limit, or are you okay with the dead end length of the private driveway coming off of Valley Road that goes all the way to the end of lot 26?
Yep, this cul-de-sac or this development has been vetted through with the fire department. We're okay with that length of, of roadway, private roadway through there. It's got hydrants and access to turn around and things like that at the end, so.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chair, cheers, thanks.
Other questions for the city?
Just one
Commissioner Weber.
additional question. Assuming the Valley Road is extended, what will the parking availability be on Valley Road?
Thank you, Commissioners. The parking will be as it is on every local street in Eden Prairie, so there will be parking allowed on the street,
On both sides?
both sides, just like in the neighborhood to the east currently.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go to the public hearing portion? Great. This is a public hearing, and anyone who would like to come forward and comment on this is welcome to do so, and we'll try to get through everyone because I know a number of people have signed up. Just first, was there a couple people have an actual presentation that they want to do? Could you raise your hand? Okay. Why don't we start with the presentations, and have you decided who's going first, or coin flip, or? Yeah, we rock, paper, scissors. All right, we'll see who's better, I guess. And then after that, what I'm gonna do, after the presentations, I'll go through, I'll read the names, and if you said you wish to speak, please come and do so, and then we're gonna go through everybody, we're gonna collect everyone's comments, and then we'll kind of have further discussion after that. Good evening. If you could state your name and your address for us, please, and tell us.
Commissioners, my name is Don Patterson. I live at 17244 Valley Road. I actually am the house that was right next to the development. I'll be adjacent to it on Valley Road. So, thank you for hearing me. We're going to get a presentation brought up. Really what it is, it's notes. I brought a few of my friends. I hope you don't mind. Anyway, the Heritage Neighborhoods, 20 years late, my wife and I actually built in the Heritage single-family homes back in 2003, 2004. So we are 30-year residents of Eden Prairie and 20-year residents of this particular home, as well as our neighbors across the street from Valley and our neighbors right behind us as well. So we were actually the original homeowners, the original builders, first people on the site. So I drew up a perspective here. I didn't know whether you would actually see it in comparison to every, as it lays out against the adjacent single-family homes and the townhomes to the south. The reason that I brought that on up is I'm sure people are wondering what's all the fuss over the density. And the concerns from the existing residents that were raised at the Pulte meeting, very concisely, it was notably higher residence density than expected. Where does that come from? As a person who built, you can imagine that I asked our developer, what's going to happen back here, okay? And most of the neighbors that did come in and ask what's going to happen back there. And for the most part, we were told there will be more townhomes like the ones that are to the south, more like Heritage Village. So that was our expectation. Now, I understand 20 years changes. We pointed out that, what was there before or what we thought would happen before isn't necessarily what's going to happen now. We knew that the road would go through. There was literally, when we bought the lot, we saw a sign, call the city for what's going to happen here. Unfortunately, after the 20 years have gone on, I think we've sort of lost track of it. We've always remembered it will go through. But the thing that we thought for sure is it was going to go through when the townhomes similar to the ones to the south were built, which, as you saw in your detail from our planners, that's at a 4.3 density, 4.3 per acre density. It's almost half, rounding down. It's practically half of the density that we're seeing being built today. That's where I think people are coming to you or writing to you and saying, whoa, there's where there's a huge density difference. We're looking at the new Pulte development is looking at 6.8. What we were expecting was basically 4. So with that, when we thought it was 4, it's like, okay, let the road open up. I guess that's what happens. 20 years later, it's a different story. We also raised concerns of that traffic going through. We're very concerned. The Heritage neighborhood flowing through Valley up to Cedar Forest and the Cedar Forest neighborhoods, they're quiet neighborhoods. People walk on the streets, people know each other. We all have dogs, we have kids, and by the way, our neighborhood, you can tell my kids are grown up, right? You can tell my kids are grown up. However, new young people are moving in, and they're bringing their kids in. And these are streets where kids ride bikes, where kids play ball. Sometimes kids fall down, sometimes kids end up, just being out in the street as a part of their play. So I want you guys to realize that it's not just the old people that are still in the houses. We're watching out for the new ones as well. So with that, when we saw this, we thought there was a lack of green space that was consistent with family needs, and the 2-story construction didn't seem consistent with the retire needs, and we were concerned about the additional parking within the development. Mr. Farr, you asked a question. Why isn't there any signs saying no? Why are there signs saying no parking anywhere? If you look at the pictorial, the reason is not just the builder's choice. It's the driveways take up all of the private road going in. There's no more than maybe 3-foot parcels in between all of these buildings. There's no room to park a car without blocking a neighbor's driveway. So that's the real answer to that question. All right, so these were our concerns. Questions from existing neighbors. So we said, hey, why does this development have to be so dense? Is it just because it can? Is it about ROI for the developer? Okay, we get it. Everyone's out to make a buck. Certainly the people should be able to sell the land. The developer should be able to make money. But does the developer and the builder needs supersede the existing residents' needs? Similarly, then we started to say, well, wait a minute. There's going to be so many people in here. Do we really have to connect Valley Road? Is this critical to the development? Is a 30-year-old traffic plan even relevant today? We talk about the Aspire 2040, good plan. Well, are road maps drawn in 1990, 1980, are they still relevant today as well? Do we really need that connection through? And then ultimately, if waiving the Valley Road alleviates our concerns, why not endorse it? So with this, why is the neighborhood so dense? As I said, 20 years ago, our vision of the land would be, our vision of this land would be part of the greater heritage village, heritage communities. If you look at plat maps going back that far, they say heritage on them. They don't say Kingsley, they say heritage. Unfortunately, 20 years passed. The land didn't turn over. People have moved on. Building and construction things have changed. We get that. But again, we thought that whatever did go in there was going to be at about 4 units per acre. The Heritage Village Townhomes and the Heritage Single Family Homes, they're built kind of below the maximum density, actually. So comparatively to the 6.8 that we're putting in, of course, we're surprised. Why do I make that a point? I make it a point because we're not just a bunch of people coming in and screaming, yelling about we don't want new neighbors. Nobody's saying that. It's just being in our shoes for a minute, you kind of have to understand where we're coming from. This is actually a lot more people coming into a very small space that none of us ever envisioned, I think especially 20 years ago, including the city. So what we notice is there's not a lot of buffer or green space transitioning from A to B to C, density differences, as in the case of the other Eden Prairie neighborhoods. Now in your packet, you'll see there's a section in there that lists out the different densities of the different townhomes, okay? And in this one, it's at the top for what's in our local area. What isn't listed in there is what the density of the single-family homes are. You're just seeing a comparison to other townhomes, but this is running right up adjacent to a bunch of single-family homes as well. Now, throughout Eden Prairie, this planning commission has done a fantastic job of, and I mean that, you guys, you've done a fantastic job of going from density A to density B to density C, back to density B, back to density A. In this particular case, the parcel is so small, the homes are packed in so much that there's really no room for buffer. Mr. Pulte didn't mention that there is an identical neighborhood in Chanhassen. In fact, you saw a picture of it up on the screen or something similar to it. But did you notice all of the green space? Did you notice the sidewalk going behind it? Go visit the site in Chanhassen. Take a look at all of the sight lines. There's not a single-family home development adjacent to that property. What they've got instead is a lot of open space, the freeway behind them, past that open space, and an apartment building next to that. There is not a single-family home in sight, nor is there an executive townhome like the townhomes that are in Heritage Village. So in proof of that, you guys are being asked not just to waive one thing, not to waive two, to waive six. You know, how is this such a perfect fit if you have to vote yes to 6 waivers in order to fit it in? And then lastly, the biggest concern for all of us, as you've seen by the 70 people who signed a petition to not open Valley Road, is that we are concerned that this high density creates a real traffic safety concern for us in the existing neighborhoods. So we talked to the city, and the city very dutifully said to us, well, we want to have Valley Road open because it can be a collector road. I think we've beaten collector road to death, okay? We know that Valley Road has been capped off by developments as recently as last year that will never allow it to be a collector road. It's terminated in multiple points. We saw that from the city slide. Actually, I had it right up on mine. Maybe we overlapped in where we got the information from. But you can see the existing homes in the circle. There's no way Valley Road's going to go through the greater part of that mile between Dell Road and Eden Prairie Road. All right. The EMS support. So emergency vehicles already have easy access and have been able to readily respond for 20 years. Well, opening it up, I guess, just intrinsically means you have greater access. But is it necessary? Does it mean that there's anything else that's going to be gained from that? We already have been serviced. My house got hit by lightning in 2006. I called up the 911, told the nice dispatcher, you know what, there's no smoke, there's no fire, but we should probably have a squad come out and take a look at it. And in classic Eden Prairie response, within 2.5 minutes, there were 9 vehicles all lined up in front of my house and in front of the greater area to make sure that our house was okay from that lightning strike. Similarly, we've had a fire in the neighborhood. Again, we had responding units from multiple cities. This was a real house burning incident. Multiple cities supplied their units in the middle of winter. There's not an issue getting there. To be frank, I spoke with a volunteer fireman, and I asked him, the city is saying that there's this gain in the support, in the actual speed of response. They say they can get up to a minute. Do you really believe that's true? Do you think that's valuable? And that person told me, he says, it's situational because it always depends on what assets are being deployed in the city. It's a horse of two sides. It's a two-horse race. Who knows? It may actually be beneficial. It may not. And I said, well, they said about a minute. He's like, maybe, but you never know. It might not actually be the minute. Safety. The connection provides access to the controlled intersection at Dell and Pioneer. That seems to be what our real crux here is. So certainly it does. But it conversely, increases traffic, and with it the safety risk along Valley and Cedar Forest roads. Also, it potentially reduces if it potentially reduces EMS response time by just a minute, comparative safety advantage to the greater potential of an accident at the bus stop or a possible collision with pedestrians walking along Cedar Forest Road is swapping the safety at that stoplight at the expense of the safety in my neighborhood worth it? I'm going to just be honest and tell you guys, I don't think that it is. And 70 of my neighbors didn't think so either when they signed the petition asking you not to open up the actual road. So if we take a look here, I will keep going. What we really have from a safety perspective, we know that the collector road doesn't matter. EMS response time is maybe, but the safety, you look at the red line, so I've zoomed on in. The red line basically is from Dell Road to Cedar Forest Road, straight up Cedar Forest Road. And I took a picture, wanted you guys to see what it's like in my neighborhood. And you can see that there's a happy couple walking on the road. Typically they have a dog, right? But what I want you to look at, and I want you to, I hope I haven't bored you to death, because I want you to hear this. Why are they walking in the road? There's no sidewalks on either side of Cedar Forest Road. There's no sidewalk. It's a legacy road. It's probably one of the first in the neighborhood. There's sidewalks on Braxton. There's sidewalks on Gateway. I'm sure there'll be new sidewalks on whatever roads we put into, but Cedar Forest Road does not have any sidewalks. Take a look at that red line too. It's a straight shot. If you look at Braxton, see how Braxton does the dog leg? And I'm sure that was planned by this commission to reduce traffic speeds. Of course it was. Cedar Forest is a straight shot. You've got cars parked along the street. You've got people and animals out in the road, kids playing, and now we're going to put 42 new homes in, and we're going to have them start to use those roads. Somebody said in your packet, somebody says, I'm not sure who, but I'm sure they're thinking it out, but makes the guesstimate 90% of this traffic is going to go to Dell. No, Don, don't worry about it. 90% of the traffic is going to go to Dell. They're not going to go through Valley Road and then race up Cedar Forest to beat the stoplight. Nobody ever does that. That's our concern, right, guys? Absolutely. That's our concern. So you know what? We look at this proposal, and why? Because of the density. There's that many more people, and they're going to be busy young people. They're not old people like me who only go in and out once a day. They're going to go in and out a bunch. Oh, and what about all the Amazon trucks that are going to go in there? What about all of the DoorDash that's going to go on in there? What about everything else that these people are going to bring into them as a part of the services? They're going to go up and down this road because it's so easy to get there. So you know what? This is why we're having problems with this. From a transition standpoint, the density of the proposed housing and the available land warrants greater attention to needed transition. My gosh, you guys, it's so packed. They're not even putting all the trees back in. They're just going to pay a fine. Why don't you give the money to the people who live adjacent to it? Why don't you give that money then to the people in the townhomes to the south and say plant more trees in your yard if you want? Okay, if it helps barrier it out, apparently we have the space because they don't. The proposal does not sufficiently detail this transition and barrier needs from the existing neighborhood perspective. We really would like to see what Pulte is planning to do to meet our needs on that transition. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this development is all about meeting the bare minimums and then asking you to go farther. We don't need a 100-foot deep lot. 80 feet's good because we've got the pipeline area on the other side. What if the pipeline area said we need to put in a fence to pop our line off? Now that lot's nothing but 80 feet. You're stuck with that. Why? Because you guys were asked to put your approval on it. In addition to the needed waivers and approvals regarding the minimum setback, lot depth, lot size, etc., the proposal is so tight, I already said this, that we can't even get the trees onto the lots. Safety. Here's the thing. City has got one side of the story. We, the residents who live there, have another side of the story. They're all focused on the same things, but I'm asking you to hear our side of the story. So opening Valley Road will result in a material increase in new traffic in our neighborhoods. The original Valley Road plan probably never envisioned 42 homes on this parcel. It envisioned probably 20, okay? That's fine, you know, but 42 homes. Let's think about this. Opening Valley Road creates a potentially dangerous shortcut. That is a phrase in traffic words that should strike fear in your hearts. It's a shortcut, because what do people do on shortcuts? They do them fast. They speed. It creates a shortcut via Valley to Cedar Forest to access Pioneer for drivers so inclined to beat the light at Dell. Guys, we live in the southwest corner of Eden Prairie. 80 to 90% of Eden Prairie is north and east of us. Who is going to turn west to ultimately drive east? Okay, they're going to go down, they're going to come out of this development. If we vote the road through, they're going to come out of this T. There's going to be an instantaneous decision. Am I going right or am I going left? Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to Kowalski's. I'm going left down Valley and I'm going to go up Cedar and I'm going to take a Cedar Forest and I'll take a right onto Pioneer. They're not going to go, I'm going to drive the 30-mile-an-hour road to take me up to 5 so that I can do a stoplight at 5 and Eden Prairie Road, when instead I can drive the 45-mile-an-hour road and go 50. And then I can take a left onto Eden Prairie Road and drive 45 to 50 and make my way up to Kowalski's. Let's be realistic about what's actually happening here. Oh, by the way, the shortcut that we just opened up, it intersects with a school bus stop. So there's a morning problem for those 17 commutes out of the morning. 17? There's 42 houses in there. Most likely 2 paycheck incomes. There's going to be 80 cars pouring out of this in the morning. 80 cars coming back at night. Oh, and you think they're going to drive all the way to the stoplight at Dell and Pioneer, or at Pioneer and Dell to come home? Not when they can make a left onto Cedar Forest, race down Cedar Forest and take a right onto Valley and come in that way. It's just the reverse traffic flow. That kind of shoots the 90% right out of the water. Emergency services have been able to reach existing residents in reasonable time over the past 20 years. You know what? It's a legitimate thing to say just because what's happened in the past doesn't mean we couldn't be better. But the question is if we become better by making things worse, then we're not really better, are we? Or if we trade off that we make one thing better by making something really worse. If one dog gets hit by a car, if one person gets sideswiped on Cedar Forest, is it really worth it? The comparative safety of the access to the light at Dell is not so great as to warrant the increased safety risk along Valley and Cedar Forest. Such a trade-off should just be considered unacceptable. And quite frankly, 70 adults currently living in the area, which 70 adults pretty much so comprise the whole area that would be on these streets, has asked the city not to open up the road. Comprehensive plan has come up here a lot. Now, I'm sure very few residents have read the comprehensive plan. I didn't know it existed until this, but I've become kind of a student of the comprehensive plan. And you know what? It's not a bad plan. It's really not. In fact, it's a good plan. But I will quote, so comprehensive plan strategy, Prioritize infill residential development through outreach to surrounding single-family residential neighborhoods. That's us. How can we help you get this in, right? The comprehensive plan is saying we need higher density. Makes sense. Where are people going to live in Eden Prairie? It's a great place to live, all right? I get it. How do we build density? With what's left, we make it higher. But you know what? The proposal contains, this proposal contains aspects in keeping with the Aspire 2040 comprehensive plan, but there's also a way it doesn't. The comprehensive plan does not mandate maximization or waiving of city codes for any given project. It's not something anyone has to do, especially people in your seats. Nor does it mandate the need to follow an outdated city roadmap. Doesn't say that anywhere in the plan. What it says is be creative. Work with the people that already live there. Find out what their needs are too. These new residents, they have needs as well. They're not even represented in here. No one's talked about the new residents. The new residents deserve a nice house. They deserve area to go out and walk about. They deserve a place to park. They deserve a place for their friends to come and see them and park. Does this development have that? Maybe, maybe not. Most importantly, there's no provision in the comprehensive plan to disregard the impact on the existing communities. To the contrary, it supports existing neighborhood input. It says it right there on page 68. If planning accommodations for new developments are supported, then accommodations that mitigate negative impacts on existing neighborhoods should be supported as well. The comprehensive plan is our guide, but it's not the blueprint. Comprehensive plan doesn't tell us we have to do anything. It tells us go this way and do it smartly. Do it creatively and satisfy as many people as you can possibly satisfy at the time. Why? Because it makes good neighbors. It makes good neighborhoods. Talking with my wife, she's the first one to point out, we don't want to have acrimony when the new people move in. What we really want is to be able to embrace them in our community and say, welcome. Kind of hard to do that if they run over my mailbox. So here we go, guys. What's the ask? What's really the ask? So the current residents are here tonight to ask the Planning Commission to help us. There's been a lot of planning going on. Pulte's been doing their best job. The city has been doing their best job. Gosh knows, Beth has taken all kinds of emails and stuff from us, really tried to work the plan. But here's the deal. Help us by voting to send this project back to planning with instructions to eliminate the need to complete Valley Road. We want the sidewalk and the bike path. No one is here telling you isolate us. That is not true at all. We want the sidewalk, we want the bike path, we want people to be able to come through our neighborhood, be with us, we want access into them. I want to be able to get to go see all of the townhomes in there. I can't do that right now because of the wooded area. But at the same point, the road is the problem. The road is the safety issue. We also would ask you guys, give greater detail in investment in needed barrier transition. I tell you what, if we don't put the road through, we don't need to just, I'm sorry, Mr. Pulte, we don't need to just give Pulte the money. Is what we can come back and we say is this, Pulte, we're gonna say you don't need the road. I want some of that money funneled back into amenities for the new people who are gonna live here. Maybe we don't need 42, maybe 40. If getting rid of 2 units because you don't have to put the road in means there's more room for a gazebo instead of a fire pit. There's more room for a greater area planting for gathering than just the most minimal of amenities possible. I think that would be a wonderful thing. And at the same time, yes, for the rest of us in the adjacent neighborhoods, it might give a little more space. It might give us a little more transition, that little more buffer that comes back and makes us feel more comfortable that we're not just butting up right next to one of the most, in our minds, highly dense packed areas in our area. And in the absence of the Valley Road, help create more green space for the new residents to enjoy this area. The reality is like I said, no one is here asking not to build. we get that there must be process. In fact, what I think a lot of you are thinking is, Don, you need a new paradigm. You talked about 20 years ago, get a new paradigm. You're right, we're embracing it. I think all of us are embracing it. But here's the thing, I'm respectfully asking the city to have a new paradigm. I'm respectfully asking this planning commission because there's a lot at stake for us. There's value in our quiet neighborhood, okay? That value we don't want disrupted. You can imagine why we are jealously protecting it. But all we're asking is just that we don't have a flood of traffic coming through it. And that flood of traffic coming through is because it's not just 20, it's 42. We can embrace 42 if the city can say, you know what, they probably don't need the road going through there. We can help them by not at least making all those 42 cars drive down the street. One of my favorite things on the 90% is if 90% of the new development is just going to go right onto Dell anyway, make it 100%. Just close the road off. Leave it closed off. I'm sure there's a good way to finish it. With that, the last thing is there's one thing the Pulte group and the neighbors agree on. Don't put the road in. We're aligned. You know what? At that, how often do the developers and the existing neighbors come on? I don't want to do a hug right now, but how often do they come on in and say, we're on the same page. We don't want the road through. That's all we're asking for, guys, is allow us to maintain the value in our neighborhood that's afforded by us through the piece that we don't have the roads overcrowded. So with this, my parting shot is, number one, a thank you for your attention. But what I would like to just remind you is you guys are in a difficult decision-making position, and I thank you very much for taking that mantle on. But here's the reality of this situation. You're going to make a decision, and then you're going to say, what's next? Pulte is going to come in, and they're going to ultimately develop this development. And if you say yes, they're going to develop the road through. They're going to finish it out, and they're going to say, what's next? All of us, we inherit what's there as long as we live in our homes. We're going to endure the 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years it's going to take to complete this out. How many construction vehicles are going to go up and down Valley Road if it's opened up? This is ultimately adversely impacting us in these ways, and we're just asking you, let us have our quiet neighborhoods. Again, thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't go too long.
All right, thank you, Mr. Patterson. And then who had the second presentation? Come up, please. If you could state your name and your address for the record, please.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Wolfgang Greiner. I live at 17356 Hanson Court in the Heritage Townhomes just to the south of the proposed development. I have here a petition signed by 51 of the folks that live within the Heritage Townhome community that I would like to give to you folks. Can you take that?
That brings us to 120 people.
Thank you, I'm the analytical guy. I'll try to be dramatically more brief. My friend Don here has done a wonderful job of really wrapping up the sentiments. So let me go quickly here, and please bear with me. We've heard a lot of numbers tonight from Pulte. We've heard numbers from the city and the engineering staff, and they're all very valuable in helping us make these decisions about the project. But the numbers alone, as Don has alluded to, don't really tell the entire story, where you really need to look at those numbers within a context. And for example, safety comes up often in the discussion, and to Mr. Schultz's benefit, I think it's important to recognize that everybody's interested in safety. I took a look at the accident reports, and the city engineer provided some numbers for me. In the last 10 years, between Stables Path, which is to the west of us, and County Road 4, which is to the east of us, there were 35 accidents. Of those accidents, 2 of them were at the corner of Pioneer and Cedar Forest Road. Fortunately, both of them were minor. There weren't any injuries. One was a young kid that was new to driving, and on February of 2013, went off the road and rolled his car heading west. The other accident was in April of 2013. That was a car that was turning left from Pioneer, turning south into Cedar Forest Road. And that's important because, and again, there were no serious injuries, but that fellow was slowing down. And in the process, the car behind that car slowed down, and the one behind that hit him, and it turned into a chain reaction. But there is a passing lane there. The 2 cars behind the fellow that was turning just didn't take advantage of it, and admittedly, in the police report, they weren't paying attention. So a relatively small amount of traffic accidents at that intersection, and that's important to remember as we talk here. Things do change. Don alluded to that. When I purchased my home 6 years ago, I called the city and I spoke with the city planning folks and asked what was planned for the vacant parcel. And I live on Hanson Court, which is directly south. My back of my home will face the new development. I asked those fellas what was planned for that location in the empty parcel. And I was told that the land was zoned agricultural and would be rezoned to the same standards as heritage townhomes. I was also told that the density would be similar and that the architectural style would be similar. In other words, 1-story townhomes with a density of approximately 5 homes per acre. So with that picture in mind and understanding there could be a road there at some point, I moved ahead and purchased my home there. That's not exactly what this is turning into, and I do understand that things change. And so we all need to adjust to some degree. But again, and I'll come back to this point about accepting some amount of change. I'd like to refer to the staff report on page number 3, please. It's really tough to read, so maybe I'll just briefly read this for the benefit of those of you that perhaps haven't read it. I'm looking at the Traffic Valley Road connection, but last paragraph. I'll skip the intro. The staff report for the Heritage development in 2001, that's when the Heritage townhomes were developed where I live. Valley Road will remain a temporary dead-end street until further development occurs on the properties, and this is an important word, properties, plural, to the west. At that time, Valley Road will be extended to Dell Road. This future road connection is necessary to provide essential emergency vehicle access and eliminate the need for the remaining undeveloped, that's the other operative word, parcels to require direct access to Pioneer Trail. The city continues to support the Valley Road connections for the reasons, and then goes on. In other words, in 2001, when the Valley Road extension was contemplated, there were 2 parcels, 2 separate owned parcels. But now this property has been melded into one project. Pulte is asking in their July 21st submission, asking for 43 units and 1 private road. 43 units, 1 private road, 1 access point to Dell. Heritage Townhomes, where I live, has 53 townhomes, and we have one access to Dell Road. It works fine. The old logic from 2001 is no longer relevant. It doesn't hold up. There's access for emergency response and no need to enter by way of Pioneer Trail. You're eliminating any traffic needing to go in or out of those parcels, which is now a parcel, by going out onto Pioneer Trail. You can accomplish everything you need to accomplish by going to the west to Dell, which, by the way, and I walk my dog every day on Dell multiple times. I don't know where your speed numbers come from. If you check with the police department, there's a regular history of us trying to get the speed limit either enforced or raised because consistently the traffic is dramatically higher than 32 or what number you mentioned. I guarantee you very few people are adhering to the speed limit during rush hour traffic, and I'd be happy to stand over there with you and verify that. But you've basically fixed the problem by melding the two parcels and giving them access to Dell. You don't need Valley View Road, the Valley Road, to go through to accomplish what the 2000 objective was. I'll be brief. In closing, we believe that the Valley Road isn't needed. We believe that the site is being overbuilt and will have a negative impact on our property values. Number three, building Valley Road unnecessarily requires the removal of many large trees and also negatively impacts the conservation easement property to the south. Number four, Valley Road will become an overflow parking lot. That's where the trailers, that's where the bigger trucks, that's where the boats are going to be parked, because with 20-foot driveways, you don't park your boat in the driveway. It just doesn't happen. And unless we create an entire no parking zone on both sides, that will become overflow parking for the community. It's just simple math. Number five, Valley Road will be, and this is important, guys, will be 31 to 41 feet from the back of my bedroom. Now, the Pulte folks showed some really nice numbers, and I'm coming back to numbers and how you interpret them. Their numbers showed 120 feet going up to the buildings, but they don't show how close we are, and there's 6 homes along the back, how close they are to the road. And depending on which tape measure you use and where on the houses you measure, it's 31 to 41 feet off the curb if the road's extended. That's crazy. Picture yourself trying to sleep at night with a window open when you have traffic coming by that close to your house. I don't think that was anybody's intent. But by jamming this many homes in here on such a small lot, you're forcing that situation. There's no room for an adequate buffer. Pulte's original plan that they submitted on July 21st with the single access road gives them an opportunity to put a buffer in. They could move north. If they eliminate 2 homes on the south side of the development, they can slide the access road that comes into the community up enough to create a real buffer that you can plant, that you can create a fence, and all of a sudden that development becomes much more palatable and livable for those of us to the south. I have to ask, does extension of Valley Road better benefit the community? I'm not hearing a whole lot of benefits here. We don't think so. The negative impacts far outweigh any positive benefits. And what's the mitigation for us for all this negative impact? For us, it seems to be pretty much a downside as far as the Valley Road going in, as well as for our good neighbors to the east. So what do we want? Do not extend Valley Road. Number 2, eliminate the two southmost townhome units and move the private road to the north to facilitate a true buffer and transition area. Number 3, we want a high-quality, visually appealing fence in style and height, similar to what you see over at the Bear Path community, which is diagonally across from us on the corner of Dell and Pioneer. What's proposed is a chintzy 6-foot plastic vinyl fence, 150 feet long. It protects only the homes that are directly across from where the feeder street comes out. It doesn't protect my neighbors to the east and west. They're totally exposed. They have no buffer. There's nothing that buffers those homes from the street. And in talking with Mr. Schultz, I was told that because it's a boulevard, you can't plant trees on it because it's only 10 or 11 feet wide, and we can't put a berm on it of any meaningful significance because that's only, I believe it was 4 to 6 inches high, which obviously has no positive impact on what we can, as far as helping with light or noise. The constraints don't allow for a decent buffer. And Don, again, he alluded to the fact that we have transitions from neighborhoods and communities and styles of construction, and you're not allowing that to happen here with this road with Valley coming through, literally 11 feet to the north of our lot line. We have no buffer, and it makes it even more difficult for us because the city has a right-of-way under that 20-foot stretch that goes across the back of our properties. That's where the underground drainage culvert is, that the overflow from the retention pond. So we can't plant anything there, even if I took it upon myself to try to plant and to create a visual barrier. Can't do it on top of the culverts. And so those are really the things that we're asking for. Our thought is that given the cost savings of eliminating Valley Road, it really does put Pulte in a position to economically, without problem, be a good neighbor and meet our expectations. That section of Valley that they're going to save all that money building could be applied towards a buffer, towards a fence, towards reducing the project by 2 units. They still have a viable economic project, and we have a livable situation that we have, because as Don had said, we're going to live with this. You guys are going to move on. Pulte's going to move on. I live with headlights in my bedroom for as long as I live in that house, unless something better comes along than a 10-foot buffer boulevard, which, by the way, since it becomes part of the city's responsibility, won't be watered. Who's going to take care of it? It's going to be an unwatered strip of land that'll just be a weed bed. I think you all can do better than that. It's interesting that we're aligned actually with the developer. It's to all of our advantage if we move ahead with this project and have one outlet going out to Dell with a private road that it serves 53 units in my community without problem. It can certainly provide the same amount of service without problem for the Pulte homes. So I really appreciate the fact that you're listening to this. If you have any questions, fire away. Otherwise, thanks for your time. Y'all good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go through the list of the order you signed up. John Thayer, would you still like to speak? Thank you. Nope. Okay. Jeff Greer, you did mark yes or no?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Diane Thorngord? Gaylord Thorngord? No? Okay. Marv Kofer? Yes. Please come forward, sir. Thank you. If you could state your name and tell us your address, please, and tell us your concerns.
I'm Marv Kofer, 9433 Libby Lane in the Heritage Townhomes. And thank you for this opportunity to talk with you. We do appreciate your service on the Planning Commission. As a matter of fact, FYI, once upon a time, I was on the Planning Commission after a little stint on the now defunct Housing, Transportation, and Human Services Commission. But at any rate, I'm here on behalf of the neighborhood that I live in, that I value, and I want to speak from the standpoint of the aesthetics and the quality of life. We live in Heritage Townhomes because it's a good place to live. We value the openness of it. We value the fact that as you drive down Dell Road, you will see, I'm sure you've already been out and looked this over, you will see a large number of evergreen trees protecting our neighborhood from Dell Road. If you look behind Heritage Townhomes, you will see a large area from one end of Libby Lane to the other end that is owned by the association. It is now in a conservation easement with the city of Eden Prairie. We value the quality of our lives. We value our homes. And as we look at this proposed development, it is completely inconsistent with the community that we thought we were buying in. And I'll speak to the point of the quality of the homes that are going in. I have great respect for Pulte. They're a fine organization. However, many of us came out of the corporate world, and we know the objective is to get maximum dollars for minimum investment. Obviously, Pulte has in mind, sure, a nice development. It would be very nice elsewhere, but their goal is maximizing profitability. We understand that. However, we look to you as our representatives to also look at the needs of the community and the quality of living. So we look at this from the standpoint of the homes that are going in, nice though they are, multi-level, and I can speak from experience. My wife died of Alzheimer's in 2010. Before she died, we had to move. We lived over in Boulder Point in a 3-story house. She could no longer navigate 3 sets of stairs. We found in Heritage Townhomes a beautiful home where she could live on one level. I would urge that you also consider that. It was previously mentioned. That is a factor in those multi-level homes. Also, the fact that there are so many homes, you've seen the statistics, I won't repeat them. There are so many homes crammed into such a small space. Very inconsistent with the quality of Heritage Townhomes. So there's an incompatibility there that just doesn't seem to fit. And we urge you to consider that. Another factor that I'm sure you're considering is the fact that these new proposed homes will be priced somewhat below many of the homes in our neighborhood in Heritage Townhomes. Now, when we get ready to sell, what does the realtor do? They look at comparables in the neighborhood. They will consider the neighborhood homes in the new development. So from the standpoint of economics on our part, I would urge you to consider the existing homeowners in Heritage Townhomes versus this proposed new development. Traffic is an issue, and certainly I respect these statistics, Mr. Schulze, that you have pulled together. However, if you look at 42 homes, if you look at multiple people, maybe a couple of people in each home, maybe a child or two going in and out, and then you look at, of course, the daily services. Amazon runs almost a continuous circuit in our neighborhood. And you look at all the many other services, traffic is going to be substantial for such a small development. The the residences per square foot are greatly in excess, even though they may fit the comprehensive plan standards, greatly in excess of those in heritage townhomes. For all of these reasons, I would urge you to reject the proposal, send it back, and take another look at a way of achieving some compatibility with the existing neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colfort. Heidi Larson. Pass. Bartone, Paul Bartone. Yeah. Would you like to come forward? May I? Of course. Welcome. If you could state your name and give us your address and.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Paul Bartone, Hackberry Court, Eden Prairie. I moved here about 12 years ago from a high-density area to a lower-density area. I'm going to take a different approach. The presentations that we heard and saw today, quite impressive. The builders' presentations, which is what they're noted for, and they should be doing, were pretty impressive. I'm going to take a practical approach. My brother worked for Del Webb Associates as an architect. We are not a Del Webb community. I assume all of us live in Eden Prairie. I assume we live here for a reason, which is because of quality of life, way of living, standard of living. And I'm not naive. Money talks. I hope this is not a fait accompli. And I want to repeat that. I hope this is not a fait accompli. The presentations mean nothing. I have walked the entire area. I have to walk to my mailbox or drive because I live on Dell Road. The report I have printed, which shows a definition of what is rural. And it comes from the United States Department of Agriculture Economic Research Service. And I just would like to read a simple little sentence. Because the U.S. is a nation in which so many people live in areas that are not clearly rural or urban, seemingly small changes in the way rural areas are defined can have large impacts on who and what are considered rural. I just put some immediate bullet points for myself and my wife as I walked the property. There's not enough space, and we are a rural designated area. A misleading plan and future layout was originally sent to area residents. When I looked at the plan, it showed the opposite side of the street as the location. And I walked there and I said, it's impossible, knowing quite well it's on the opposite side of the street. So why was that sent out? I have no idea. Why was the first meeting canceled? I have no idea. Was Bear Path notified? Was letters sent out to many of my friends who live in Bear Path? I play tennis in Bear Path. I play tennis in the park at the end of Dell Road. And I know and have coached high school baseball, freshmen. I know the area and I know children. The points that I'd like to make are very simple. What are EPA requirements? There's water on the premises. Are there wetland surveys? There's severe traffic conditions. I've listened for what, approximately an hour and a half of traffic density or lack of density. It's absurd. There are only 2 lanes on each street. There's a running path, and the traffic that I traverse daily and see who passes me by on a 2-lane rural road, and I'd like to emphasize rural road, it's ludicrous to think that they're going to go 25 miles an hour. It's absolutely ludicrous. You, as all members are residents of Eden Prairie, you take pride in your community. I know that you are concerned with waste disposal, trash removals, noise abatement, valuation of homes, and impact studies must be done more thoroughly. Impact of Flying Cloud Airport, takeoff, landing, immediately overhead in flight path. I know it's immediate overhead because I see them over my house daily. I am in the flight path. That flight path comes in pretty low, pretty noisy, and I've taken pictures of the underbelly of those planes. So it's clearly delineated how many come in, how often they come in, and the amount of noise. I think we need a survey, and we need to see what the impact is. The sheer number of children and buses in the area alone makes this incomprehensible to proceed. I will be specific. In the front of my house, school buses stop. They stop because they wake me up, they wake my wife up with the clamoring of children waiting for the bus to arrive, and I see it and hear it outside my window daily, frequently daily. In fact, I open my garage door. Why? Because these children who are standing 2 feet from the street need to have a place of refuge in inclement weather. How many people do that? I know you would do it for your own children, and I'm sure you would do it for any other children. They are welcome in my garage waiting for a bus to come. Those school buses are frequent visitors to the area. It's ludicrous to think that these children and these numbers of buses are not going to impact what's happening in this area. I don't care about the niceness and the professionalism of the presentation. Builders are in it for money. We know that. It's clear. I've been in my own business for 35 years. I've done international business. I've worked with all kinds of communities. The impact surely is clearly understood by every member of this commission. And I think if you understand what's going to be built next to your house, and you look at the presentations, you might reconsider a little bit more the impact of going from a rural designation to an urban designation. I've seen Del Webb communities up close and personal. I don't think you want to live near there. I don't think we are in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I don't think we're in North Carolina. I don't think we're in Florida. Those are Del Webb communities. I'm giving you a practical concern of what lies ahead. And as members of this commission, your interest should be the stature and the value of residents and property values for Eden Prairie, where each and every one of you live. I hope this is not a rubber stamp. I hope it's not a fait accompli. And I don't care how presentations are professionally done. Lives are at stake. And if you take a walk around my area and you see the children, and there's quite a number of children walking up and down this road, it's impossible to say it's not going to be an impact or a danger. It's a hazard, and I think it has to be reconsidered. I welcome anyone to visit me, visit my house, visit my block. But 2 lanes on Dell Road with 1 car parked on the side is impossible to pass. And if you'd like me to video the cars that drive 50 miles an hour, I will do so and make my own presentation. That's how outraged I am, because we scream at cars to slow down. We're not naive. I'm not naive. Money talks, I know that. But I certainly hope sometimes common sense, intelligence, and value of community takes precedence. If you'd like a copy of my definition of the rural community, again, I would welcome it, and I certainly will pass along to all the other members I know, from Bear Path to Heritage Place to every other community. 2 lanes in one direction, 2 lanes in another direction, and you want to put the number of cars, buses, trucks, and visitors is outrageous. Practically speaking, I wish you all to value it as coming into your neighborhood, because it may come soon. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Renee Potter? Renee Potter? No? Paul Loffer? Pass. Greg Zimprich? Pass. Annette Hosch, maybe? Annette? Okay. Nathan Hesker? No, thank you. No? Okay. Ryan Frederick? Rebecca Frederick? Good evening. If you could state your name and tell us the street you live on, please.
Yep, Becca Frederick. I live at 9236 Preston Place, and the density is one thing. All of these new townhomes are basically in our backyard, and I know they said there was 120 feet or so, but I mean, that's fine if it was a single family, if it was an executive type home, but this is going to back up to, at minimum, 12 homes just in this little section that backs up to our fence. And yes, there's a fence there. Yes, there are some trees there, but what it doesn't account for is all the trees behind those trees, all those well-developed tall trees that we get to look out to every single day in the summertime, blocking everything. And in the winter, of course, we see everything, but that's just because there's one single-family home that I believe no one lives in at the moment. But that is going to be a huge change for us personally in one of those 3 single-family homes that are backing up to these townhomes. And the other thing, I know that we've kind of, beat this Valley Road access by a dead horse, but you mentioned that it was, a resistance to change. Well, it's not a resistance to change. Connecting this, even though it was part of a plan 20 plus years ago, it's a quality of life situation and a safety situation for us. We have the 2 kids here. Maybe you've heard them fighting over the iPads, but they're still here because we're still here because we think this is such an important thing to present as a community, as someone who is going to be directly impacted by these townhomes and by this connection at Valley Road. You know, the reason we moved here 3 years ago to our home is because it was quiet, it was private. We have no problem letting our kids go out on their bikes and just have the run of the cul-de-sacs. There are 2 of 14 kids that are 9 years old between these 2 cul-de-sacs that play with each other in the summertime. Doesn't include any of the other kids over 9, which there are several others. So to think about all of this additional traffic coming through with our kids playing outside, with us going on bike rides, with them walking to the bus stop is just, it's kind of terrifying for us. And I don't know, living in fear and losing sleep over what this could be and what this could mean for our family is not a good feeling. And I don't think anybody should have to feel that way living in their own home that they purchased under a certain precedent. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mark Skalski.
Pass.
Pass? All right. That's everyone that had said yes. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken that has changed their mind and would like to come forward? Okay. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing and have further discussion with the commission.
So moved to close the public hearing?
All right, a motion, do I have a second to close public hearing?
Second.
Second, all those in favor of close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing is now closed. All right. That's not it, we're gonna have further discussion if you want about, we'll talk through some of the issues and things, so. You're welcome to stay.
I'm sorry, does that mean we can stay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. It just means we're not going to take any more public comment. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you're welcome to, more than welcome to stay, welcome to leave. All right, anyone want to, a couple big themes here. Anyone want to kick off this discussion?
I have a question for staff.
Yeah, Commissioner Mitty.
I know sometimes, Mr. Barnhart, I know sometimes plans can change slightly between planning commission and city council. You might, there might be a few adjustments here and there to a site plan, usually nothing drastic. If, in this case, the plan brought forward to us includes the extension of Valley Road, if we were to say we'd like staff to consider, vacating that extension and doing kind of the other plan, is that something that would theoretically be a way we could, recommend approval, or would that require the project to come back with, we'd have to reject it and then come back with a revised proposal?
Chair, Commissioners, that's a very good question. The answer depends on the project, or depends on what change you want to make. In this situation, if you wanted to make a recommendation to the City Council that they approve the project, but for the extension of Valley View, I think that would be, Valley Road. I always want to call it Valley View, I apologize.
Yeah.
If your recommendation is to the City Council to approve it, subject to the removal of the extension of Valley Road, you could do that in a motion. What the City Council would get then is a recommendation from the Planning Commission of not including that extension, and a recommendation from staff of having that extension. The applicant could make the choice to make any other changes that you come up with in terms of, let's say, you wanted more buffer and require a removal or adjustment of the layout. The developer could make some changes to that before it goes to the council, or he could ask for further review from you. But you're just making a recommendation to the council on potential changes. There will be a public hearing at the City Council level, regardless of what the recommendation is. So the council will see likely the same plan or a different plan, but something similar.
Okay, thanks for that reminder. Because in my head, just remembering the process, we could theoretically, vote to oppose this project. It still goes to city council. City council just knows that we don't support it. And or in theory, we could say we support this with the exception of this component of it. And
Yes.
then okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Taylor.
And this is to staff again, Mr. Barnett. So originally, the plans called for the Valley Road not to be connected, but it was staff that recommended the road to be connected, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yes. The initial concept had just basically a connection to Dell to serve the property. One of staff's very initial comments was to connect Valley Road through consistent with the comprehensive plan.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, Commissioner Weber.
When Valley Road was originally planned, did it go from Eden Prairie Road or Spring Road to all the way to Dell? Was that the plan?
There was a east-west connector in the 2002 comprehensive plan. This is as far back as I can see a plan. In the 2002 comprehensive plan, which was the comprehensive plan done after Valley, or the townhome development to the south, I forget the name of it. There was a east-west connector in the general area. Based on Carter's comments and kind of looking at the maps, Valley Road is about the only option available to this point in terms of that east-west connector between Pioneer and Flying Cloud Drive to the south.
Mr. Chair, I have another question.
Commissioner Taylor.
And Ms. Brown, this is about Valley Road again. Are there any requirements or new permit requirements that based on X amount of homes in an area, it has to have X amount of exit roads to get out?
Chair, Commissioners, I think there's not a section code that has a minimum number to answer your question, but as the city engineer had noted, it's always in our interest to provide as many accesses in and out of a neighborhood for a variety of reasons. In this situation, the one drive onto Dell was one option. We wanted to see that connection because of the reasons that the city engineer had mentioned earlier.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Kirk.
Just to reflect on what I've heard here, the elephant in the room is the road. And density is less of an issue than I expected it to be honest. Still an issue with some people, but less of an issue. Because when I was looking at this plan, those were the two elephants that jumped out at me, is the density and the road. And I think as a planning commission, by the way, I do this whenever we have a big group because it's a good opportunity. Planning commissioners are all volunteers. We're voted in by the city council on 3-year terms. And so we have no stake in this other than our desire to serve the city and to do a good job for Eden Prairie. We also have in this circumstance, no ability to pass this. We can only provide a recommendation to the city council, and ultimately the elected officials, as they should, make the final decision. So this is a great opportunity to get your input, to get airing. We appreciate everybody who's here and speaks because it gives us insights. So the insights that I gained, and I'm throwing this kind of out to my fellow commissioners, are the road in capital letters, bold, exclamation points, density to some degree, and otherwise it's, we here on the Planning Commission see this more regularly than most of the citizens of Eden Prairie. And there's always issues regarding changes to neighborhoods. and discomfort around that. And some of that needs to be listened to very carefully, and yet some of that's also inevitable. So those are the three things I heard. So to me, I think the way I'm thinking about this whole thing is as a commission, we need to, decide what we want to vote on. And Commissioner Meddy, asked a very good question there. Do we want to vote on the recommendation, what's on paper here, or do we want to send it back to the planning department and say, we don't like this, we'd like a continuance, and we'd like you to work on something? And those are really our only two choices. We can either go with what's stated and say thumbs up or thumbs down, or we can ask for a continuance and ask for the city planning group to look at some more. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm just trying to lay out what I see here. Anybody else want to add or contradict that?
Mr. Chair, I'll take a crack at my own perspectives. Thank you, Commissioner Kirk, for kind of helping reinforce and underscore our position here on the commission, and certainly letting everybody here know that we are one of you and are looking out for the city's best interest and collectively our own best interest here. And these are difficult conversations to have. That said, I'm just going to jump into the cauldron here about this road issue. I live in northwest Eden Prairie, relatively close to the high school, and there is in fact a road that is marked and enforced, no shortcuts to the high school, because there had been an issue with a shortcut through a single-family residence neighborhood from Dell Road up to Valley View Road and to the high school. And so I live relatively close to that. And so I've monitored that over the 20 or so years that I've lived there. And frankly, the city does a very good job of enforcement and signage to keep that problem at bay. So I know we have the ability as a city to react to potential traffic issues if one might occur. So that's good. As a planning commissioner, we do rely upon the professional judgments of traffic engineers, city engineers, and people like that to do detailed analysis with a higher education focused on those technical requirements for roads. And as a planning commissioner, I'm hard pressed to go against a recommendation for greater safety. And as much as others like you may disagree with the perception of safety or the lack of safety on something, I think the distribution of trips out of this neighborhood is important to be distributed on multiple access points, and that the perception that there will be more traffic through your neighborhood, and in fact, I think there will be more traffic through your neighborhood. I think that fear that is within all of us about accidents, dogs, children, safety, et cetera, like that. We've seen a lot of these developments come through our commission, and we know that through enforcement, signage, and such, those can be controlled. Nobody wants an accident to occur, and of course, one accident is one too many, and we all share that fear. That said, I think that the road, since it was a planned connection for a good reason, albeit a number of years ago, that hasn't changed. We have connecting streets all throughout our community. Frankly, we have a lot of cul-de-sacs. We have a lot of dead ends, and neighbors appreciate dead end because they're quiet. There's no traffic going through it, and people enjoy that. This is not a surprise extension at all. This has been on the books for a while. Everybody knew about it, and I'm hearing that it's going to be safer and it distributes trips better. So I'm on the side of putting the road through, even though I'm weighing issues that you perceive versus what we see from the professionals who design roads for a living. The issue about density, and I'm going to jump into just a little thing about transitions. A lot of our job up here is dealing with transitions. And there's two unique situations going on here. We have a transition between zones, and that's like single-family versus multifamily, and those are distinct zones, and those require transitional solutions in our zoning code. And then there are transitions between developments, not necessarily different zones. In this case, multifamily to multifamily. There could be slightly different densities, but it's the same use, and there are fewer transitional requirements because you live right across the street and sometimes 30 feet away from a multifamily user, and more to the point, you share party walls with your neighbors. So proximity is closer than it would be from a single family to single family type thing. So we have to look at transitional requirements for both zonal differences as well as within zones, but slightly different densities. I think the road is exacerbating the issue of separation, especially on the south side of this development. So I'm seeing the developer asking for a number of waivers here. A lot of them seem fair and reasonable, and staff supports that, and I support most of them myself. This south side waiver about the setback to lot number 1, I'd like some dialogue with my fellow commissioners further about that. It seems as though we have an opening for some compromise here whereby we can get rid of at least one waiver, if not two, by getting rid of simply, lot number 1, which is the variance to Valley Road, taking their development just another incremental step further north. That would, ironically, take their density number from 6.8, I think, down to 6.7 or something like that, and probably knock off another waiver request right there. But more importantly, it would solve the physical issue of some of the proximity issues to that south heritage development to the south, understanding that, trees, separation of distance are just two of the characteristics that could enhance that transitional zone. I appreciated Mr. Greiner's comments about what could be done there on the south side of Valley Road, which is actually, on the other side of their development, right? If they're developing everything to the north of Valley Road, and then there's the heritage development there. And I think improvements could be made in the style of fence, height of the fence, and/or arborvitaes grow fast and thick, staggering things from a landscape. We have an excellent landscape architect on this project, by the way, and so I know that they know how to plant trees that can be dense and provide visual and noise screening very effectively. And so for very little incremental money, additionally, I think they can make that work for everybody to the south. These are going to be your neighbors. I think Don pointed that out as first speaker, and we want you to play well and knock on their door and make new neighbors when this development arrives. And whether it's 42 units, 41 units, 40 units, or whatever, I don't think that's going to make a lot of difference in the number of trips that we see in and out or what have you. But these people will want to be your neighbors, and they'll want to be good neighbors to you, of course. I think their use is consistent with everything along Dell and Pioneer Trail, so I don't have a problem with the use at all. I wish there was a little more green space, frankly. Is it dense? Yes, it's dense. We're responding to a lot of pressures from the Met Council to add housing in the metropolitan area. That doesn't necessarily put a lot of pressure on us, but it's out there as a fact. So I don't know if I hit every point here. There were a lot of asks here, but I did want to state my opinion about the road going through, and I do think that some buffers and transitions could be improved, especially on the south side. So that's it for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Fart. Any other general comments, or anyone want to have that discussion about Lot 1?
Mr. Chair.
Yep, Commissioner Beatty.
With regards to lot one, it seemed to me that the bigger concern with the neighbors to the south is the proximity to the road and not necessarily that other building. Because I think your point where, the buildings amongst that development themselves are that close to each other. So I'm not sure if that's really going to, and looking at the plan, maybe they could, if it could result in maybe that road, being a little bit further away, that might help alleviate the issue. I don't disagree overall. I'm not sure if that is necessarily going to address the main concerns from the neighbors from the south. Although I agree that it would help eliminate two of the waivers. Overall, with regards to the road connection, going into this meeting, obviously, the city, it was clear that desired to have this connection. This connection's always been planned, and looking at the plans and the road, it seems to me to make sense. Coming in and hearing the neighbors, and trying to put myself in those shoes if I lived in this neighborhood, it does make me feel, okay, if I lived here and I didn't support this connection, what would I do? I agree that I have a hard time going against staff recommendation. So if staff were neutral on this issue, whether or not that road connection was important, I would definitely side with the neighborhood. But since staff and public safety are suggesting this connection, I have a hard time going against that. So that's just sort of where I sit, I think. I'm a little bit neutral on it. I could go either way. But yeah, it's hard for me to say that. As much as I want to side with the neighborhood on this, it's hard to say that the staff and engineering reasons aren't just as valid.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Kirk.
just based on Commissioner Meddy's comments, I'm probably in the same place, but I'm tipping the other way. I mean, this is a very unexpected and overwhelming response to the road. And I think part of our job is to listen to the community and react to it. So I, like my fellow commissioners, have a huge amount of respect for city staff and city engineering and all. And frankly, walking into this meeting, I felt that the road made good sense. And yet, to hear the overwhelming dissatisfaction with the road, I would probably, sitting on that tightrope, I would probably fall on against having the road. That would be my view on this. So I would, if we were to vote on this as it stands, I would probably vote against it right now.
If I may follow up on those comments, because I completely agree. Generally, I support road connections, and I'm against cul-de-sacs for a variety of practical reasons. But we have a road that we're talking about servicing a community for, and the community is unanimously against it. We haven't had one person come up here and from the community and support this connection. So insofar as these are the people that are going to be affected by the road, I don't support putting it through at this point.
Any others? So I guess to piggyback on are people feeling, what are people feeling as far as the recommendation, sending it back for further refinement without the road? Or are we thinking sending it forward, or is it something that maybe this is something city council has to decide?
I mean, again, a big part of our job and a big part of what we do here is to air the issues. And I know darn well that all the council members will watch this video. And so to get the issues out on the table. So I would suggest that we go with the recommended motion and then just see where the votes go, yay or nay. And that way we're sending an appropriate signal to the city council And if that signal's split, then, I mean, that's our message to the city council, is it's not unanimous one way or the other, but there's arguments both ways. And I don't mean to pass the buck to them, but ultimately, the buck ends up with them, so.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment here. Part of my profession, I'm a, I'm a global motor vehicle program lead. I'm also a safety manager at one of the companies here. And when I look at the safety aspect and you look at the road, back to Commissioner Farr's comment and Commissioner Meddy, having that ability to have a egress of more than one way out the community, I think is a higher safety factor in this design as well. Although the community, and I know the community is against it, I think there are some other elements from a safety element that comes in play with the road being connected, having, I think it's one on the north side and the south side. So I think we definitely would be split hairs here, because I would be more in favor of having that road connected for those purposes. So I just wanted to get that on record.
Thank you. Mr. Lauder, did you want to speak to some of the concerns that have been brought up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I appreciate all of the discussion. And I'm not too loud, am I? I feel like I might be. I feel like I'm very loud.
There's a sound guy, he'll let you know. So.
Okay, thank you. So a couple comments. We'd be happy to take a look at whatever the commission ultimately decides with regards to the road. You know what our initial site planning was, that's been discussed. We modified the plan per the direction of the city engineer, because we want to work hand in hand as a partner with the city. But I can see that the commission is struggling, and understandably so, with what would the direction be. If I may respectfully ask that if with the application overall, it sounds like there's support for it, but the big question is the road. So perhaps there would be a motion to approve the application to move on to council with further study of the road to be addressed at the council public hearing. And if the commission were to decide, we recommend that come out, we would work with staff on how to present that. If the commission would decide to keep the road, we would work with staff on that. Of course, that would be a less laborious exercise, because our submittal already accounts for it. With regards to the unit count, we actually, with our original submittal, our concept, had 43 townhomes in there. We've already lost a unit, and I would just respectfully request that we not reduce the unit count further. One of the advantages to eliminating the Valley Road connection and allowing us to have that private road connection to Dell is that would be a narrower road, which means the road would be further away from that lot one. And then that would also allow us, per the depiction that I included in my narrative, to be able to do some berming and landscaping and buffering to help mitigate the concerns to the neighbors to the south. So with that, I submit that consideration respectfully, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Meddy.
I guess just more on the topic of how we vote. I like again, since I'm a little bit on the fence, I'm a little bit on the fence with regards to the road, not the road. I like the idea. I guess I'm just talking to staff or to fellow commissioners about making a motion to approve it and ask that staff further study the need for that road connection, or however we want to maybe propose that. or I guess the other option is to say, all right, are we voting, who's for, who's against the road? Is that how we want to vote? So I guess I'm just posing that question to how you guys think we should handle the vote or the motion.
Commissioner Farr.
I'll put my speaker on, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I like Commissioner Meddy's idea about maybe a separate vote for that, interestingly enough. And just for the record, I share her, I don't want to say ambivalence about the road, but had it been not for the professional recommendation of safety and distribution, I too would almost prefer no road. 6 1/2 dozen another maybe for me, but there are advantages to not having the road go through. What I wanted to say, though, is that I think of a road as a utility. And I don't mean to depersonalize it because there's a lot of personal air in the air tonight. But if every neighbor could raise their hand and say, yeah, I don't want a bright street light outside of my window shining in my bedroom. Yeah, I don't want a gas line going down the street and me paying for it because I'm all electric. There's a lot of infrastructure that the city is responsible for distributing throughout our city. Water, sewer, gas, managing stormwater, and roadway safety, pedestrian safety with sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. So a road is a utility. It's an infrastructure. It's a public service that we're providing to our community. And fortunately or unfortunately, our city has had a lot of dead-end cul-de-sac situations, and people have grown to maybe find greater home value at the end of a cul-de-sac. And there's a lot of truth to that. But we also have to balance that with the needs of getting the city vehicles around, et cetera, like we've talked about. And I think that above ground circulation by getting school buses in a safe route, getting buses and other buses in a safe route, or other connections to utilities and things like that, that's their business. They do this day in and day out. And so I have a hard time not backing a strong city recommendation for that road utility to service this part of our city. That's really where I'm coming from.
Is everyone putting a pin in the road? Are people good with the density?
I support it.
I'm good with it.
Not a problem.
All right. We're probably, well, I guess I could weigh in a little bit. I'm a little stuck on this one. I've voted no before, easier than this one. But it's hard to go against recommendation of the city for the road. But I think if the density was lighter, I'd feel better about the road. But the two together just doesn't feel like it's in harmony with the neighborhood to me. That being said, if I would just entertain a motion unless anyone wants to have further discussion, and then we'll have to see where we land.
Well, I wonder if we haven't decided whether we're going to try to take a vote on a recommendation regarding the road that would be a separate vote than the PUD recommendations or changes, waivers, etc. Do we want to take 2 votes?
I would lean towards just taking a vote and taking a vote with the motion that we have on the table here. I mean, the discussion has been pretty extensive, and I think the council, knows where we stand, and to complicate it further, I think I would prefer just to go a yay or a nay on the motion as it stands.
With or without additive commentary, formal commentary to the motion? Just raw like this?
Yeah, that's where I'd lead. I'm open to something else, but
Okay, all right, that's.
I think the understanding is if you vote against it, you're saying I don't support the road connection. If you vote for it, I support the road connection is sort of, I think, the implication based on the discussion. and not necessarily against the rest of the project.
And that
I
has
won't
been
speak for everyone.
that has been the tone of the entire, excuse me, the entire evening so far, is the road.
Yeah.
I mean, my notes, every place I have is road, road, road.
Okay. So,
That makes
hold
sense to
on.
me.
yeah.
Just let me go to Mr. Barnhart. Did you want to?
I think you're correct. When you make a vote on the motion, after the vote is concluded, after you can say why you voted no or yay, to provide further clarity to the council.
Commissioner Weber, did I interrupt you, or Commissioner Farr?
No.
Oh, okay.
So no, I was just going to suggest that if we just wanted to vote on the motion raw, as Commissioner Kirk suggested, which is fine, perhaps we should just weigh in on the other waivers then, because we're asking for, what was it, 6 waivers? And let's just send that message to the city council with greater clarity, just in case they don't know if there's any ambiguity amongst us regarding the waivers. So just for informational purposes, I'll start. I am fine with the density waiver. I'm fine with the minimum lot size waiver. I'm fine with the minimum lot depth waiver. I'm fine with the lots on frontage, of course, private road versus public road, of course. I right now am not supporting the lot 1 setback on the south, the 20-foot setback versus the 30-foot, that waiver on the south side. I don't know if I've got did I get all those waivers, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I spoke my piece on the road.
Any further discussion about the waivers?
I'll speak. Again, for those of you that don't go through this as often as we do, every time we go through a PUD, we have waivers. It's just part of it. So to have no waivers is very, very rare. In fact, it usually doesn't make it to the Planning Commission if it has no waivers, because it's meeting all the issues. So I found none of the waivers to be onerous from my perspective.
I agree with Commissioner Kirk.
Any further discussion?
I think we should vote on it.
Someone will make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to recommend approval of the PUD concept plan review, PUD district review with waivers, zoning change from rural to RM 6.5, preliminary plat subdividing 2 parcels, site plan review for a 42-unit townhouse development, all on 6.13 acres as represented in the August 28, 2023 staff report and based on plans as listed in the August 28, 2023 staff report.
All right, I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Grote. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Second, all right. Commissioner Taylor with a second. All those in favor say aye.
We have some discussion, Chair?
Yep. Further discussion? Sure.
Discussion before the vote? Yep.
No problem. Commissioner Farr.
Good, okay. So my vote of approval is contingent upon my further recommendation to not allow the waiver for the side yard or front yard setback, I guess it would be, because we have Bailey Road going through, for the setback there, 20-foot versus 30-foot. But the approval suggests that I'm also good with the road.
Any other?
So you want to amend it, or do you want to just vote against it as is?
No, we're taking this raw, so I'll go without the amendment. But as council considers this further, I think, as we all said, it's good to have our voices heard.
Yep.
Because there's a number of issues here that are, I'm weighing back and forth, and I'm not going to say no because of the waiver issue.
Mr. Barnard.
Yeah, Commissioners, thank you for that comment. I would caution, I think your comment after your vote would be to share why you voted yes or no, likely on the road issue or any other issues I've identified. I would caution against, and maybe you didn't use this word, Mr. Farr, but condition your vote on removal of an item And if I put words in your mouth, I apologize, but I thought I heard that.
Thank you. I did say contingent upon it, but I didn't mean to suggest that I was holding my vote back,
Okay, yeah.
for the record.
So I guess what I'm looking for to give to the council is further information as you deem appropriate on your vote based on the proposal in front of you tonight and the motion given.
Okay. And you've taken Commissioner as far as notes, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay, all right. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Maybe we should
Show of hands?
show of hands just to, who are the nays? Just, so Commissioner Weber, Commissioner Kirk, and Commissioner Piper. Okay.
Thank you.
It was 5 though.
4 to
All right.
3.
4 to 3. All right, we're recommending approval to the city council.
So do we want to state our, just to,
Would you like, yep, Commissioner Kirk.
I mean, mine's pretty simple. I've stated it already. I am the unanimous, the neighborhood being against the road was the reason I voted nay.
I did as well. That's why I voted no.
Yep, and I don't feel like the two major issues just are not in harmony with the neighborhood for me, so. Okay. All right. Thank you. It moves forward to city council. All right, next up on the agenda this evening, Three Oaks Estates. Request for zoning amendment from rural to R1-9.5 and parks and open space on 5.06 acres. Preliminary plat on 5.06 acres. Will the proponent of this project please come forward? Good evening. Thanks for your patience.
Good evening.
Being number 2 on
I'm
the
going to give
agenda.
you a few minutes till it settles
Yeah,
up.
maybe just. Okay, so would anyone like a quick break?
I'm okay.
Is everyone okay? Okay.
I have it up.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay.
Way to clear the room.
I'll make it short. My name is,
State your name, please.
what's that?
I cut you off. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Name is Nathan Haskin. I am the owner and developer of 9614 Crestwood Terrace. Right now, I am proposing to do a five lot development. I actually live across the neighborhood or live across the street from the development itself, to be honest. The lots range from just a half acre to just under an acre, which conforms to the surrounding areas. The lots, I am proposing a variance of R1 13.5 to a 9.5, which narrows the width down from 85 feet down to 70 feet and allows a side yard setback from 25 to 15 feet because we do have a Magellan gas line easement going through there. 1.72 acres of the 5.06 acres will be dedicated to the city as part of the outlot that is along Riley Creek down there. And this would also propose the completion of the trail between 9618 Crestwood Terrace and the Ponderosa Pines development further down. Here's the kind of a preliminary plat. So you can see where outlot A is, that's where the Riley Creek is and the bluffs and all that. Here's kind of an aerial depiction. So lot 5 down there, that's kind of where the Magellan gas line comes through. The only lots that would not be, that would be about 76 feet is lots 2, 3, and 4. Lots 1 and 5 will have over 100 feet of frontage along Crestwood Terrace. So kind of lots that were, or homes we were proposing to put there, what I'm expecting will be an open development for custom builders are going to be surrounding type of the area. Some of the neighbors here, that home on the right is actually my property there. So like I said, I live right across the street from this development. And some of the other neighbors, so they'd be larger 2 stories with a stone facade and like to have a front porch of some sort. Like that. That actually is, that's the neighbor to the ponder, or the lot number 5. He also shares the Magellan gas line. And we're gonna assume that whoever buys lot 5 and develops it will have a silo garage similar to that. But otherwise, that's a pretty simple, no infrastructure, no road, nothing like that, just infiltration basin. That's about it.
Thank you. Any initial questions for Mr. Haskell? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnhart, will you give us the city perspective?
Yeah, very simply, the 5-lot subdivision, 1 outlot that will be deeded to the city. The property is going to be zoned from rural to R1 9.5, and the outlot A will be rezoned to parks and open space, consistent with other similar situations where property was provided to the city for open space purposes. During the public review process, we received one phone call and 1 letter or email. The phone call was related to the zoning, the proposed zoning of the property, and that caller suggested the property be rezoned to R1 13.5, which allowed basically a wider road, or excuse me, a wider frontage and additional setback between structures. The applicant elected to choose the R1 9.5, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and there are similar situations in the city where kind of this infill type development is zoned to R1 9.5. So staff has really no objection to the zone change as proposed from that perspective. The other comment we received was related to trails along the south edge of this property or this project, and that that's part of our Parks Master Plan. So while the developer is not providing the trail kind of in that ravine area, that is part of our kind of long-range plan for additional park and trail infrastructure. So I guess long story short of saying that that's kind of part of our long-term plan, and now that we own the property, we have additional resources to do that. Staff is recommending approval of the project with no waivers. And as drafted here. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mariner. Any questions for the city?
Mr. Kirk, I'll just note that this is not a PUD, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's why there's no waivers. So your statement earlier, you're good. There's always waivers in the PUDs. I have no questions for staff.
Great. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Farr.
So just as a matter of observation here, looking at the plat, there's discussion about the different types of zoning districts that this could fall within, and I don't take exception to the zoning district that they've chosen. Specifically, the tighter side yard clearances, which I see on the plan. However, my observation is after just driving the street up and down a few times, the lot lines that you see across the street, actually where the applicant lives, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 lots across the street from this development that we're carving up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. And so it's just that the rhythm of the driveways and the houses down the street changes intermittently as you're going down the street. It's not a regular rhythm that's consistent down the same street with houses on the left and houses on the right. All of a sudden, the frequency of driveways is, it just stutters at a higher frequency for a half a block, and then it goes back to normal. And so I think that observation is odd. I mean, the observation's keen, but the result is odd, I should say. So it's worth everybody just taking that into consideration. I understand maximizing the number of lots, and it's not the end of the world, and I'm not going to throw myself on the sword for this, but I think it ought to be noted again that the rhythm of the street as you go down it will be inconsistent left and right, and then it'll return to the same rhythm further on down. And I find that just a little bit unsettling. Whether that bothers anybody else, I'm anxious to hear if that does or not.
I'll comment for you. Did not bother me. But I understand that the uniqueness with the situation, this gas easement is forcing the lot on the right to be a lot wider than all the others. And if that weren't there, these lots would be spaced out a little bit more than they are now. So I think the request is reasonable. And also the fact that if you're looking at the rhythm of the street, there's a street with a cul-de-sac, and then it begins these, and then right now on the other side there's a farm, and then it begins, the slightly larger spacing. So I don't think that the rhythm is it's not disrupting a well-established rhythm. I see where you're saying, but I don't have an issue with it.
I've never thought about the rhythm of driveways, but now I'm sure I'm gonna.
I didn't even
when I
notice
drive
it.
down
Yep,
the
I didn't
street.
even think about it, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Again, just an observation.
All right, any other discussion? We'll go to the public hearing. All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and speak for or against this project, please do so now. Not seeing anyone, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. Any further discussion?
I think it looks
Someone-
good.
Someone want to make a motion?
Move to recommend approval of the zoning change from rural to R1-9.5 and parks and open space and preliminary plat on 5.06 acres as represented in the August 28th, 2023 staff report based on plans as listed in the August 28th, 2023 staff report.
For a motion from Commissioner Kirk, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Grote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right. Moving forward, thank you for your presentation. All right, next up on the agenda, 15201 Birch Island Road Variance 2023-03BOA. Request for approval for variance to permit the construction of an attached deck 0.1 feet from the rear property where a 25-foot setback is required. Good evening.
Good evening, council.
Thank you for your patience.
It was entertaining and interesting too, so.
All right, if you could state your name and tell us about the variance request here.
I'm Michael Struzis. I'm the owner of Norseman Construction. I'm on here on behalf of myself and the homeowner.
Can you get a little closer to
Anita
the
Knowlton.
Maybe just pull the mic in a little bit there. Pull it towards you.
There we go.
You can pull it, can you pull it down?
There we go. How's that?
Yeah, pull it down. There you go. That should help.
That better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
So, yep, Michael Struzis, owner of Norseman Construction. I'm here on behalf of myself and the homeowner, Anita Knowlton, for the as-built deck. There it is. So there is a staff report I think you guys all have already from the Planning Commission from when we met with them. It's an odd lot with an odd railroad variance for tracks down a hill. And it's a 0.1 foot, so 1.2 inch request to encroach into that space. So it's an oddly shaped lot. The house is placed weird on the lot as far as where the yard area is. It's a big backyard that she's technically not allowed to use because of the way the railroad variance works, easement works. And then you get to a wooded area. There's some pictures I have. You get to this backyard, you get to a wooded area, it goes down the face. You can click through and find it here. So here's your yard. You can kind of see the deck. You can see the deck right there. Yard, woods, face, and then you can see down the hill is the railroad tracks there. The entire reason this is an issue, and I want to be accountable for it, is that this was an existing client of mine. I did an extensive remodel in her home of her main level, kitchen, changed her roof line, everything, to get ready to have these festivities for a celebration of life party for her ex-husband, her late husband, I'm sorry. And the deck came in kind of at the last minute. I built it because we're so crazy busy in our industry. I built it fast because I could sneak it in the schedule and do it myself with my team quickly to have it done for her for this party. It just meant a lot to her. So that's why it's an as-built, because it was initially unpermitted. So there's no other spot where this could have been relocated anyway because of the design of the house, the slope of the lot, and it's built off, which you can't see here, hold on. Oh. So where it's built there, that was already an existing entrance to the home with a concrete landing and steps down to the yard. That is right off of her kitchen. And the placement, size, and depth of it is placed where it is to avoid utilities, attached to the house properly, and then also so the footings could be dug to depth, to proper depth for frost footings. So it's very strategically placed as well. It's a pretty simple request, a pretty small variance. I'd really just open up to questions that you have, if anything, that I can answer.
Any questions from the commission to start? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnhart, will you take us through the city report?
Yes, Chair, Commissioner, sorry, just looking for a better picture. When we review a variance application, we look at how that variance impacts really the 5 criteria for variance. The city has to find that certain conditions are met when granting a variance, and if those conditions aren't met, you don't approve the variance. And really, the standards for variance have been adjusted over the years. So last, I think 2012 was the last time there's been a pretty good rewrite of those. And really looks at kind of what's the big picture of the objective of the zoning ordinance, and how does this proposed improvement impact that big picture. So in this situation, you know, there's the 5 criteria. I'll kind of go through them briefly. Is the project consistent with the comprehensive plan? Well, the use of the property, residential, single-family residential, consistent with the comprehensive plan. What does the comprehensive plan speak to about character of the neighborhood? And that's kind of the next part of it. Is comprehensive plan usually doesn't go into that level of detail. It's the big picture use of the property. The zoning ordinance gets into the bigger kind of, or the nuts and bolts of what's the character of the neighborhood? How does this improvement fit within the confines of that neighborhood? And so that's usually where we find the uniqueness and the best arguments for granting a variance is how the purpose and harmony of the ordinance, harmony intent of the ordinance. This property butts up against an active railroad that is quite a bit down the hill from where this improvement is. This improvement is kind of on top of a knoll. The house is kind of on top of a knoll, and then the train tracks are 20, 25 feet below that. Heavily vegetated, as you can kind of see from the trees. Much of that vegetation is on a railroad right-of-way, and the railroads, they want to make sure that their rail lines are not impacted by vegetation, so they'll cut trees down when necessary. They don't appear to impact that operation here. So we expect that those trees on this property and on the adjacent properties to remain to help kind of screen this impact. That said, a deck improvement in a residential district is not usually one of your more impactful improvements. It's a relatively low deck. It looks to be about 30 inches, 36 inches above grade. There's a railing there. It's not going to impact views from the neighboring properties to the east or the west, or really from the railroad. And then the other side of the house, obviously you can't see any improvement there. So this is an improvement that kind of looks a little fishy in terms of 0.1 feet from the property line, to be candid. Looking at the big picture, not a huge impact from a staff perspective. So from that perspective, we weren't too concerned on that. You know, the budding property, the railroad, the deck encroachment is likely not going to be visible from adjacent neighbors, so you're likely not going to see perceive the encroachment and kind of reduce the mass that is the goal of the open space, you know, the rear yard setbacks. The more impacted properties, as I kind of briefly mentioned, is the railroad down the hill. I can see it, and then there's a neighboring property. I believe it's to the southwest. You likely won't see that either because of the tree and the grade changes. So, impact and, or excuse me, purpose and intent of the ordinance, I think we're satisfied there. The unique circumstance for this property, that's the strongest argument for supporting a variance from staff's perspective. As I said before, this property abuts the railroad. There's not a lot of properties that abut a railroad in this zoning district. There are 24. I counted each one of them. This property is the shallowest of all of them. It's about 102 feet of depth. 125 feet is the minimum. So right away, this property is really lost 23 feet of rear yard setback that other similar lots in this zoning district have. So by approving this ordinance, you're not opening up a can of worms and adding this deck with a 0.1 foot setback all over the city. You really, I think we can narrowly tailor the order approving the waiver, or excuse me, approving the variance based on the unique characteristics of this property, based on size or depth, based on its proximity to the railroad, and then also the unique kind of shape of the property. As the applicant alluded to, is a trapezoid. We don't see a lot of those, and not in the good way, because this property, more than half of the house is in the rear yard setback, so there's really no feasible alternative other than building a rear yard deck on the front of the house. And while we do encourage porches in our city, in this situation, it didn't seem to fit. So staff is supporting the waiver, supporting the variance, based on the comments that I've verbally shared and also outlined in the staff report, which were incorporated into the order. The Planning Commission has 4 options. They can approve the final order as we've presented. You can modify that. You can continue the variance for additional information, and if you do so, I'd ask specifically what you're looking for so we can help address that. Or you can deny the final order as we've drafted. Staff is recommending approval, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the city on this, or
Got a question.
Commissioner Grow?
Who belongs to the existing sheds? Are they railroad property, or are they something that homeowners have built on the railroad's property?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I can't speak to who built those, but I believe that the property owner enjoys the use of them now. We see that as not a bearing on the variance itself, so we didn't push for that.
No, I understand. I was just curious because it's probably sort of the way things have evolved here. And we're off by 1/10 of a foot, so be it.
Yeah. Fair comment.
Other questions or
Mr. Chair, that was the question I was going to ask as well. It's just noted on the survey as 2 existing sheds off the property, and the photograph makes it pretty obvious that the landowner is using sheds off the property, and it's not addressed in the staff report. So again, a keen observation by the commissioner, and if it doesn't have merit to our application, it doesn't have merit to our application, I guess.
All right. Any other discussion, or someone like to make a motion?
Do we need to open the public hearing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right, thanks. For a long evening. All right. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward to speak about this project, please do so now. Not seeing any, entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
So move.
Kind of feel like Commissioner Meddy should get the chance to move it. Sorry. All right, I have a motion, a second. Thank you for catching me there. All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, public hearing is closed. Anyone?
I'll comment on my comment. My only, so I have, it gives me like anxiety as someone who works, in the real estate industry and understands title and laws. They have a lot of encroachments going on, clearly. So I did a little bit of Googling, and it didn't seem like the fact that there's some land use issues, and I wouldn't even call them, it's more than just nonconformity, which the existing building is, but these sheds are encroachments that shouldn't belong there. That doesn't really affect legally anything I could find as to whether or not we should grant this variance. But part of me was like, oh, we're giving someone a variance when they clearly have some other major issues with their land use. But I think that looking at this, just one thing, the other thing I was kind of looking at, so variance runs with the land. A new owner comes in, hopefully someday either they get permission to actually, have those sheds, or the railroad tells them to take them away, whatever. That I think that should get resolved, but it should not affect this vote. But this variance is running with the land, so do we feel that in perpetuity being allowed this 0.1 foot setback, are we okay with that? So in looking at it, it is specific to this idea that they can construct a deck. It doesn't talk about if they were to, remodel the home or something. That doesn't give the right for someone to come in and like build maybe a larger structure or something different closer. So that made me feel good with just the way the variance is written. So given all that, I do think this meets the tests for allowing a variance, and I would support it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other thoughts or discussion? Or would someone like to make a motion?
Move to approve the variance for setback for a deck at 15201 Birch Island Road as represented in the August 28th, 2023 staff report.
I have a motion from Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Commissioner Weber. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you again for your patience. All right, any planners reports this evening?
Just briefly, looks like we will be canceling the September 11th meeting. I didn't want to share that earlier because I didn't know how the Polte project was going to go through. But we will be canceling the September 11th, and I do anticipate a meeting on September 25th.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, any members' reports? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.